Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eden. Alongside our fancy hairstyle, we also have a quite nice assortment of items and actually a pretty powerful run to work with here. And we have, first of all, 2 bomb items, which is not only good because of the synergies, but also because we get 10 bombs very early on, and we can use them to find the secret rooms and second secret rooms, and it usually tends to be a pretty good idea, just because they can contain something really useful. In this particular case, one of the secret rooms contained Grid's Gullet, and if you don't know what that item is, essentially it's a new item. When I say new, I really mean it's like 3 to 4 months old at this point, but essentially it's one of the items which was added in Afterbirth Plus, and it doesn't show up that often, although if you play the game you'll probably know what it is. But nevertheless, what it does is essentially every 25 cents that you get in money that you have in your inventory, you're gonna get a health container, and once you lose that money, you're also gonna lose that health container. So essentially it's like tying your money to additional health, and it's a very nice item because it works with the keeper. Not a lot of people know this, but also just because you get some disposable health containers, and you can always have control of when you're gonna get more and less, and it's just very useful for devil deals. You can kind of finagle with that and then just trade those health away in order to get some better items. And that would have been a great idea or a great thing in this particular case because we have Goat Head, so it just seemed like a natural fit, but I still decided not to pick it up because I felt like it's gonna impact my run too much. I tend to rely on just being at 1 health or maybe at half of a red heart or maybe no health at all, so just so I can maybe trigger and go to those boss trap rooms, or maybe if I have the Polaroid I can then use that Polaroid invisibility, and that's always a good idea because I feel like being at low health just means that you have more control over what you take and what you don't take. Maybe the only difference or maybe the only difficulty being picking up those devil deals. That's why I like to be at least 1 red health container, because then I always have some health to trade away for those items. And it's one of those things which I feel like is more of a personal preference than necessarily a good strategy. I definitely do think that attacking the Grid's Gullet in this situation would be a good one just because of the circumstances and all of the other items, but I decided not to do it, and I feel like it did pay off in this particular case because we found the Whore of Babylon. That was actually quite a significant damage upgrade. Obviously later on we also did get some other strong items which kind of helped us carry the run, but in this particular case I feel like it was the right decision, even though it was a bit of a luckier one than necessarily a strategic one. But besides that, later on that we got in the run, this run did start evolving kind of nicely in the sense. First of all, the start was great because we got a Guppy item, so that means we're kind of predisposed to finding 2 more, and essentially we also found one of them right now, but decided not to pick it up for various reasons. I'm gonna tell you why not, why I kind of hesitated to pick it up in that situation right after I finished this school of thought. But first of all, I did find that Guppy item we started out with, and we also had those bomb items, and just having consumables early on can really lead, or at least open the doors to success and some other great things that can happen in a run. And it really did feel like this run was predisposed to succeed from very early on. And then once you know that, and once you know that run goes to mom, or only mom, then it's really just up to how well can you finagle and manage your resources, how much damage can you dodge, how fast can you do things, because suddenly, because there are less points overall, it becomes much more important for you to actually strategically distribute them, or at least be very careful on how you're gonna use those resources in order to get the most amounts of points of possible. So for example, if you're talking about damage penalty, you can imagine getting a 1000 damage penalty is much more impactful on a run that has a total of 20,000 points as opposed to a run that has 50,000 points, and that's just gonna make a bigger difference. And I felt like this is where this run is heading, and especially with all of the strong items that we got. I thought item penalty was gonna be a big deal, but later on we did find the shovel, so for that reason I knew that maybe I could relax a little bit, and even if I do take some unnecessary damage, it's not gonna be the end of the world. What's important at this point now that once we have the shovel is just to use it as often as possible, try to find those scroll spaces, of course make it to boss rush, and then use it to get to those additional floors. But the reason why I didn't pick up Guppy's head in that situation, even though it probably seemed like the most obvious choice in the world, is just basically I didn't have enough health to afford it. I mean, I did have enough health to buy it, but my reasoning was I had the wafer, right? So by having the wafer, that means I can essentially take an opportunity to find a sacrifice room so I can go to the dark room, and that's usually a good idea because it just nets you a lot of points on a run that goes only to mom. Obviously, if you know that the shovel is gonna be there, you don't even have to worry about it, but in the case you're playing blind, find, then you have to realize that there are some set of circumstances that you have to do in order to maximize your points, essentially. And usually with mom dailies, a good idea is to go to the dark room just as soon as you can, because the odds of you actually finding a shovel or an Avos runes aren't that high, and that means that you have to take any alternative routes which are maybe more guaranteed to give you points in the end. And of course the ideal situation is to go do boss rush, teleport out of boss rush, go to that sacrifice room there, and then maybe go from there. But in essence, that's not what you can really rely on. And finding the wafer early on just kind of led me to believe that as soon as I find the sacrifice room, and if one was gonna to appear, I just have to take it and essentially go to the dark room as soon as possible. And taking that Guppy's head in that situation would have left me at 3.5 spirit hearts, which I didn't feel really comfortable with. I felt like I needed the DPS more from the Incubus, because Incubus is gonna help me more on a floor like Dark Room. Obviously Guppy's head would be useful, but it's not really gonna do much for me unless I get that third Guppy item. And considering I did plan that there was maybe a chance on the next floor to go to the Dark Room via the Sacrifice Room, I knew that I'm not gonna have many more chances to find that third Guppy item. So it just felt like Incubus is a much better deal in that situation, because then I have more DPS and I can deal with enemies much more efficiently, which means there's less chance of me getting hit, and all of that shebang. I hope that you see where I'm coming from, and that my decision wasn't because I'm a bad player, but it was actually a strategic one. Even though it did pain me not to take Guppy's head in that situation because of just how good of an item it is, and because it would have completed the Guppy transformation, it's still a mistake, or maybe a conscious decision that I've made that I feel like did reward a certain playstyle. Just kind of not reward, but I did take into account all different variables that could have happened, and I feel like because of that, sometimes your play might look weird or gimped, even though that's probably not really the intention that I was going for. But this is my explanation. Hope that you see where I'm coming from in the end. But okay, so we did find the shovel. We don't really have to worry about that. We explored more floors, and obviously at this point it's just as soon as we find the sacrifice room past the womb 1 floor, my personal rule is if there are 2 more floors to take the sacrifice room, I usually take the first one. So on the womb 1, if there was a sacrifice room, I wouldn't take it, because then there are 2 more chances to find the sacrifice room on womb 2 and shoal, of course. But if one did appear on womb 2, then I feel like the odds of another one occurring in the shoal are too low, which means I'll take the one on womb 2. So again, maybe a bit of a convoluted sentence, but I hope you see what I'm saying. And for that reason, I decided to just stick true, obviously keep my health as high as possible. I did get hit a few times in shoal, but I wasn't too worried, because again, I had the wafer, which means that my damage that I'm gonna be taking in that sacrifice room is going to be severely reduced by almost a half, not by almost, but exactly a half. And essentially every spirit heart I'm going to get is not only going to get me 1 hit of additional damage, but 2 hits of additional damage. So even if I was at only 6 spirit hearts remaining, just because there are so many blue fires in shoal, which have a good chance of giving you spirit hearts, because then there's the glitch, if multiple explosions happen in the same frame as they do with Bomber Boy, you can get more than 1 spirit heart on average, which means that just you're gonna be loaded with spirit hearts to go into that sacrifice room. I didn't feel too pressured to maybe keep my health high, and obviously I didn't take damage intentionally, but I didn't feel too bad about it. But as it turned out, there wasn't sacrifice room here anyway, so all my worries were for nothing, I guess. But that's just how it goes. You just really have to kind of keep in mind that to one particular place or spot, not spot, but you kind of have to play with the knowledge that anything could happen at any time, and you have to adjust your play and sometimes make sacrifices which make no sense, or maybe pick up items that you otherwise wouldn't pick up. And all in all, that's what I feel makes Isaac fun. And in this particular case, because it was such a decision driven daily, and I feel like a lot of different decisions may impact your in score, just it felt right, and I felt like this is something that I want from dailies more often. Even if there was a shovel, and obviously even if there is a goal that goes only to mom, a lot of people wouldn't have found the seam, so to say. But in this particular case, because I feel like the shovel was relatively obvious, and because I know that still there is variance, but I feel like this is one of those types of dailies which rewards good play and knowledge as opposed to something else. And I really enjoyed those, because it's not so much about anything else, which I've talked about before. And I'm kind of going and prolonging the sentence, not really knowing what to say, so maybe this is a good idea to just end the video right here. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.